4. There is bhavana in the sense that the mind is involved in going through the experience. Explanation of the 4 ways of bhavana. 1. Expressed in simple language, success in any worthwhile undertaking depends on inducing the necessary conditions by means of an appropriate action which has due measure. All these conditions which have been induced must be coordinated harmoniously. No single one of them should be either in excess or deficient, nor should they encroach one upon another. For example, in the practice, penetrative insight into impermanence should be in full accord with, or lead to, insight into suffering. Likewise, penetration of suffering should conform, or lead to, penetration of no self. Penetration of no self, again, should lead to weariness, arousing dispassion, etc. When the practice follows this course, we can call it bhavana, development, or progress. Here is an example from modern affairs. In the world of today, the whole progress in science, technology and so on is not being appropriately and adequately used for peaceful purposes. Which means all the so-called progress in different fields leads increasingly to more turmoil and trouble rather than to peace. This shows that some things are in excess and others deficient, some things are overrated while others are underrated, and, consequently, no real bhavana or progress is achieved. 2. The second definition of bhavana implies a harmonious coordination of different things serving as instruments. People must join hands to work for one single desirable aim, otherwise progress cannot be achieved. In the world of today, the tens and hundreds of branches of knowledge are not coordinated for one single aim, peace. They are put to use for various purposes according to men's vested interests. Often those interests do not include peace.
In the process of mental training, all the mental states, dhammas, which are instrumental in practice must be applied in a coordinated manner to bring about at a given moment the very result required, otherwise no bhavana is realized. The Buddha has pointed out, the way of practice concerned with material gain is one thing and the way of practice leading to nibbana is something quite different, anahilabhyapanasa ana nibbana gamini. This means that action may be the same but motivation quite different. For instance, strict observation of the precepts may be activated either by mere desired material gain or by a genuine will to overcome egocentricity. The former is for the sake of material gain, the latter is aimed at nibbana, despite the fact that the line of conduct is the same in both cases. This same principle applies to right effort, the practice of concentration and insight, or of any other action. If all these ways of practice are not carried out honestly and harmoniously, then an influx of craving or wrong views will result and the bhavana of this, 5th, stage will not manifest. All the parts of a vehicle must work together for one purpose. 3. The third definition of bhavana means that all different kinds of effort are directed towards sustaining energy in order to bring about the desired results and to use everything at hand as instruments performing their respective duties. This is bhavana. Whether bhavana is taken in the sense of inducing or developing, it must be able to control directly all efforts or energy for the desired aim. In the subtle practice of Dhamma, all effort must be controlled strictly and with right understanding, otherwise the practice, from the first step, will bear no fruit if there is sufficient knowledge of the principles of practice but the knowledge of the application of those principles is lacking. Or if they are applied wrongly, then nothing will bear fruit. This third definition of bhavana should be kept in mind.
4. The fourth definition is that the mind is involved very much in practice, therefore it is called bhavana, i.e., the mind is practicing constantly until it reaches a certain climax while experiencing some fruits of the practice. Such fruits, however, belong to the initial steps and only form the basis for further practice. To conclude, if one devotes one's time and energy exclusively to one single object, the practice can be called bhavana. In the process of mental training, the word practice has a wide connotation. It implies all necessary effort to be made in the beginning, in the middle and in the end. The beginning stage includes both the preliminary actions, pages 14 till 48, and the undertaking of the actual practice. In the middle stage, previous achievements have to be maintained and stabilized until, in the end, one strives for the final goal. The task of entering and dwelling in the different absorptions, jhanas, the emerging from them and then reviewing them is quite difficult for the mind, attainments can very easily be lost. So mental training concerning the absorptions must be done with the utmost thoroughness. A task not to be compared with any physical work. The fourth definition of bhavana also means that if there is genuine bhavana, the mind is pleased to continue the practice and to practice with such a familiarity that the meditator heads higher and higher. Summing up the whole theme, bhavana signifies successful practice which depends upon these facts. One is able to induce various mental states in a proper and harmonious way. One has control over the devices in order to coordinate them for a single purpose in meditation. One has the necessary energy at one's disposal to control the devices, and that one practices sincerely and wholeheartedly throughout. The meditator should remember these 4 points. Dhamma samadhana, inducing various mental states during bhavana.
While the meditator is experiencing rapture which has arisen through the 16 ways and is being maintained by means of development, bhavana. In the fourfold sense, he is said to have completely developed the fifth stage. Thanks to this full development, he induces various mental states as will be explained. The Pali word here rendered induces is samadhanati, lit. Brings together, or gathers. Here it means the coming together of different mental states by the power of the practice. It is that kind of practice which, after having been properly and successfully carried out, brings together all natural results of the training. Generally it is said that the meditator brings them together, and even that he attains to this and that. All this is a convention way of speaking. Further, this very bringing together of various mental states is the attainment of Dhammas, or realizing the Dhammas within oneself. When one correctly understands this point, he will not be apt to have a wrong view of the nature of attainment or realization. For instance, through misunderstanding some may believe that some attainments through the practice of concentration were holy, miraculous or magical, and cling to this erroneous belief, Silabhata Paramesa. While experiencing rapture, as already discussed in detail, the meditator induces certain dhammas. The 5 mental faculties, the 5 mental powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Eightfold Path, and 29 other mental objects. The arising of each of these different groups of dhammas involves 2 more actions. Knowing the domain, gakara, of each of the various dhammas and penetrating the benefit of the calm, samatha, concerned with those dhammas. The 2 actions are exemplified in the following. 1. Inducing the faculties, indriya. Here the meditator maintains one-pointedness of mind by means of long in and out breathing until there arises the feeling of rapture.
Having induced this feeling, he contemplates it as impermanent, unsatisfactory, no self, and finally, he knows the causes of its arising, manifesting and ceasing to be. Now one has to consider what has arisen during the practice. The meditator gathers or induces the 5 faculties, namely, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. They are well known by name, but the meditator comes to know by personal experience what these faculties really mean. The true nature of each faculty is this: when the meditator has induced rapture and contemplates it as impermanent, etc., there arises in him faith, which is firmly established. All doubts with regard to the practice are resolved. No longer does he need to have faith in another person, for he, himself, is experiencing them. Notice, too, that this kind of faith has just arisen, since it cannot possibly be present prior to undergoing experience. This is the genuine faculty of faith, sadhendriya, for it is a personal experience. Obviously, if the contemplating of different kinds of rapture is not practiced correctly, the faculty of faith may not arise at all. In this stage, other factors are involved at the same time. The factor through which the meditator vigorously and perseveringly exerts his mind in contemplating rapture until he finally succeeds is no other than the faculty of energy, virendriya. It is present all the time while the meditator is contemplating the feelings. The factor through which he can be firmly established in contemplating rapture is a quality of mind called the faculty of mindfulness, satindriya. That quality of mind, too, is present at the same time. Non-distraction or non-oscillation of mind, which must, of course, be present at that time, is none other than the faculty of concentration, samadhendriya, the seeing or knowledge resulting from the contemplating of feelings as impermanent, etc., is the faculty of wisdom, panandriya, itself.
All these 5 faculties are present at the same time in right proportion and in harmony. They all result from the act of contemplating the feelings, so it can be said the contemplation of rapture simultaneously gives rise to the 5 faculties. Domain of faculties. The bringing together of the faculties in full also involves the knowing of their domain, gakara, or object. For the faculties become manifest in full only if the meditator clearly knows their object. In the case of the 5th stage, their object is rapture or feeling itself. As for the other stages of practice, objects differ depending on the corresponding causes giving rise to the faculties. The so-called domain is, in fact, the very object of contemplation on the basis of which the faculties are induced. It is not without reason that the object is referred to as domain. The term domain throws light on the meaning of object from another angle. It is a domain in the figurative sense. This is the place in which the mind endowed with its attributes, i.e., the 5 faculties, moves about. To see the faculties in reality includes seeing their basis of operation. When we look at a cow or any number of cows, we see not only cows, but also the place where they are grazing. This simile applies to the faculties and their domain. All this goes to show that real understanding is beyond the scope of ordinary knowledge, which cannot make feelings such as rapture truly manifest in the mind, so that the faculties as realities have no basis of arising. Only with practice can there be real understanding. Penetrating the benefit of calm, when the mind has induced the faculties and knows their domain. It also penetrates them in the sense of being soaked in them, or it fully experiences fruits thereof. This is called penetrating samatha. Samatha implies the fruits or benefit connected with the gathering of, or inducing, different mental states, dhammas.
The term atha, benefit, here has a fourfold significance. It is blameless, undefiled, purified, and excellent. Anything which has these 4 characteristics, of being blameless, etc., is called benefit in the language of meditation practice. As for the word sama, it literally means evenness or calmness, and has a fourfold significance. It is the establishment of the object on which the mind is fixed. It is the non-distraction of mind. It is the resolution of mind through which the object is rendered manifest. It is the purification of mind. Any benefit, which here refers to calmness itself, having these 4 characteristics, is called samatha, the benefit of calm. At the time of bringing together the faculties, the meditator, besides knowing their domain, must also penetrate the samatha. It is only when samatha is penetrated that the act of bringing together of the faculties is accomplished in the truest sense of the word. This accomplishment is the criterion for the successful practice of this stage, as far as faculties are concerned. If the different faculties are not actually experienced thoroughly, then they are mere names, nothing else. All that has been said about the bringing together, samadhana, of the faculties so far, can be summed up as follows. 1. All the faculties, performing their respective functions to the full, are manifest. 2. The domain, or the object, of the faculties is clearly seen. 3. The bringing together of the faculties goes together with being soaked in the benefit or the fruition. These 3 characteristics serve as the criterion of success in realizing all the different groups of mental states. Even if we simply say, he has practiced the Dhamma and has given rise to the faculties, or just he has brought together the faculties, it is understood that all the 3 characteristics are involved, i.e. in all cases, no matter whether it is the bringing together of the 5 powers, or the 7 factors of enlightenment,
or the Eightfold Path, or the remaining 29 mental objects, the same principle holds good. The corresponding groups of mental states are induced, their domain or object is clearly apprehended, and their samatha, benefit of calm, is fully penetrated. 2. Inducing the 5 powers, bala. The powers have the same names as the respective faculties: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom, but they have a different function. The Pali word for faculty is indriya, which literally means head or chief in performing the function implied by its name. The Pali term bala means power in the sense of power to fight or resist undesirable states of mind. When faith, sada, functions as head or chief in the act of believing, i.e., leading one to have a correct and firm belief, it is termed the faculty of faith. When faith fights or resists doubt and uncertainty, it is called the power of faith, sadabala. In the practice of anapanasati, the powers arise side by side with the faculties. The power of energy, viryabala, fights and resists laziness. The power of mindfulness fights negligence. The power of concentration fights agitation. And wisdom is called the power of wisdom because it fights ignorance. All this clearly shows that what are called powers do have a different meaning and are not identical with the faculties. These mental attributes, i.e., powers and faculties, are compared to a king who can suppress his enemies. The monarch has two virtues, then he is king and therefore superior to his subjects, which can be compared to the indriya or faculty. And the fact that he can suppress or destroy the enemy at any time is the virtue of a man of power, comparable to the bala or power. All the five mental attributes, i.e., faith, etc., have likewise two virtues. Each of them is an indriya when viewed as head or chief in performing its particular function, and a bala when viewed as a fighter of defilements, without wavering in the face of faithlessness,
laziness, etc. As explained above, this point makes it clear that any virtue or Dhamma we possess must be powerful enough to fight its opposite. The proverbial Thai expression, head flooded with knowledge, unable to find a way out, indicates not knowing truly, which corresponds to the lack of both faculty and power. If a person were to know truly but still be unable to help himself, then it would mean he had the faculty of knowledge but not power. The knowledge is to be regarded neither as faculty nor as a power, if the person has no control over himself, because that knowledge does not head into infusing power into that person to practice. An idle person may, day after day, think over the ills of laziness in all detail and yet never act upon it. In that case, to say that he has the faculty of knowledge but no power is just not correct. His knowledge or wisdom cannot be accredited as faculty, for it fails to induce the power of energy. Since his wisdom is ineffective, neither faculty nor power is to be found within him. Even though he is skilled in thinking like a philosopher or a learned man, whether it is a question of success in worldly affairs or in the practice of the Dhamma, one should understand the characteristics of both the faculties and the powers. To sum up, one must have faith to destroy superstitious beliefs completely, one must have strong perseverance, which is guided by reason and mature understanding to destroy indolence and feebleness, one must be endowed with mindfulness in the sense of recollecting in time the correct principles, one's mind must be concentrated, clear and alert to the extent that it can overcome agitation, restlessness, and torpor. And finally, one should know what should be known. Sound judgment must be developed on sound reasoning until one sees within oneself things as they really are without wrong understanding or wrong views.